Hi, my name's Sam. Welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about Marvel's Beavis and Butthead comics. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this started. We're going to take a look at the first 3 issues today. I have about 15 of them or so. I believe that they ran for about 32 issues. So we'll definitely take a look at what I have. Once I do find more out in the wild, I'll be sure to grab those. From what I've noticed, just for a collecting tip for you guys, there isn't a lot of these things really out there in the wild, except for the first handful of issues. The later issues you really don't see, and the ones that I do see out in the wild, anything pretty much past like issue 10 going forward after that, get fairly pricey. They're not like super expensive, but some places mark them up to like 25-30 bucks, which is kind of crazy. So here's my tip to you: head over to eBay, Amazon, wherever people are reselling it, find a lot, find one to where comparing it to Price Charter, and try to see if you can find deals, because I found the first 12 issues, I think I paid like $18 for it. That's like an absolute steal considering the prices that some of these Beavis and Butthead books can run for. So that's my recommendation, especially like I said, you don't see a lot of those issues out there. Beavis and Butthead is the perfect comic for me. I'm a big Beavis and Butthead fan. I'm just a huge Mike Judge fan in general. Beavis and Butthead is one of those things that it incorporates music. Myself being a musician, that's obviously going to appeal to me. So right off the bat, it says scraping the jaw, scraping the jaw. We got a Judas Priest reference. One of the things that I can say about the Beavis and Butthead comics from having these, you get to see a variety of, like, hey, maybe you had to draw a deep fryer or had to draw a cash register. They're not ordinary things that you see in comic books. Like I said, it's kind of a cool shortcut or a good reference to kind of have these things laying around for different things. Like look at this, just right off the cover, a bunch of dentistry tools there. How often do you see dentistry tools in a comic book? Not very often. Staying on the theme of music, talking about Rush counterparts, Melvin Houdini. Yeah, we got Mike Lackey and Rick Parker on this. Rick Parker does a majority of the covers, but once you get into some of the other issues, other artists kind of start to pick it up, and he does onesies and twosies here and there. Stays on as kind of the overseer of this project. Beavis and Butthead, the cartoon, kind of the original premise of it, they would watch music videos and clown on those. This is more or less what this is, but they're clowning on comic books. Not all of it. There's funny stuff that happens outside of that, but that's where some of the appeal does really come into play. Stuff like this, where they're just saying, hey, the Punisher is badass. So they're not wrong. And what I think is really funny about these comics, you have these, Mike Judge style characters, but they're in these backgrounds that are pretty detailed. The art style works for the comic itself, but if you handed this to somebody else and said, hey, draw like a cartoony, realistic-esque background with Beavis and Butthead characters, but they have to stay, in their art style, a lot of people wouldn't be able to nail that, because Mike Judge clearly has a very unique visual style, and then you're trying to pair that with something that's a little more detailed. I think it's a pretty interesting, way that they had gone about this, rather than just copying Mike Judge's background stuff. His cartooning reminds me of Art Crumb a lot, especially like these close-up on those eyes. Is very underground. Cool little drawing there. Kids comics are one of those things that, unfortunately, a vast majority of them are not very good. They're kind of just throwaway kids comics. The stories, the art in them sometimes can be questionable. Like I've been saying in previous videos, the Ren and Stimpy and the Beavis and Butthead comics are by far, the golden standard when it comes to this stuff. Not only because it stays true to the source material, they're putting in more effort than what a lot of other comic book companies or creators might be doing when they're handed these sorts of projects. I don't know. There's 100, there's a million examples out there of licensed comics, especially, that just are not great. I think that if somebody were to hand me a licensed comic, I would definitely use the Ren and Stimpy and the Beavis and Butthead comics, a reference point on how to get a relatively well-known IP across in the comic medium, while still giving it its own personality, not just straight, ripping off the source material. And we can see we got a little ad here of the spaghetti incident. If you're not familiar with the spaghetti incident, it's just a cover record of a bunch of Guns N' Roses bands that had influenced them. If you're not actually familiar with the actual spaghetti incident itself, it's a pretty interesting story. I would go about and actually look up where that name comes from. But it's a pretty cool album. There's only a handful of things on there that I will listen to in passing, like the Attitude cover. Beavis and Butthead number 2. So this is one of the more funnier ones. There's a bit that's in here, and it's kind of an outdated joke, but I don't know why it's really funny to me. It's kind of a throwaway thing, but I don't know why. I just find it really funny. Once we get there, we'll take a look at it. There's another issue. It's like a summer special issue. That one is pretty funny. We'll end up taking a look at that at a later date. But just look at this. The drawing in this is nuts. I see a lot of again, Crumb. More maybe Rick Veitch in this drawing. Yeah, Rick Parker is one of those guys that I think is really underrated. And a majority of his work that I like is his lettering. I put Don Simpson at number 1 for letters, and then Rick Parker's probably at number 2 for me. Lettering is obviously a lost art. A lot of it nowadays is digital. I practice hand lettering myself, Ames Lettering Guide, that whole bit. I think it's hard for people to have a personality come out in lettering. You can see that in people's drawings and whatnot. That's easy to do, but in actual handwriting, when you're trying to make it appeal to everyone, you can't just, everybody has like their handwriting and it looks unique to them. But when you're trying to make it put into a printable text for everyone to read, you can't just sloppily put down your handwriting down. You actually have to take practice and get good at it. Different fonts. Rick Parker, and like I had said previously, Don Simpson, those are 2 letters that I can point to right away to where you can just look at, their fonts and how they write and all of that, and you can tell right away, oh, that's going to be Rick Parker. So this was that funny bit that I kind of wanted to talk about. They're walking into a funeral home. They kind of go into the morgue section right away. And they're like, whoa, there's a bunch of stiffs in here and they're naked. Beavis is like, hey, I got to stiffen my pants. And he's like, oh, Beavis, they're guys. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. It's just so dumb. Like, that's why Beavis and Butthead to me is so funny. Because everybody's had a dipshit friend like this or knows a dipshit like this. Butthead is obviously a moron too, but when you actually look at Beavis, I don't know anybody like Butthead personally, and I've never met anybody like that really. But Beavis, we've all met that kid who is twitchy, likes to catch stuff on fire. What can you do? These 90s ads. Can't tell me Crumb wasn't a huge influence, especially on these comics. This is just underground faces. Same ad from the last one. You're going to see a recurring theme here. Brutal stuff and flies, maggots in his mouth and worms crawling into his nose. It's really not going to really break these down. Pit Boys reference, a little dated. We're not really going to break these down and look at these stories, really. The whole point of doing these series is to kind of show you guys, to give you appreciation maybe for kids comics a little bit more, as well just the variety of things that you do get out of these. I think especially if you're a comic creator, illustrator, writer, you name it, there's a lot that you can pull from these books. Like I said, the lettering is crazy. The backgrounds are crazy. There's a lot of things in here that you have to draw that you may not see in a lot of other books. They're just good things, I think, to have laying around. Clowning on some Wolverine here. Badass Wolverine, Tom Morgan. I always love this, what's his name, Mr. Anderson. He's clearly just Hank Hill. Again, I hate to keep pointing at it, but I just see so much Crumb in his work. He was turned to Swiss cheese That's funny. Yeah, well, like I said, we're just doing quick little flip throughs of these, just kind of taking a look at them. We're not going to talk much about them, just a little bit of insights and whatnot that I might have on them. But for the most part, pick these up and just look at them yourself. That's the whole reason behind this. Okay, so this is one of those fun issues that I was kind of talking about, to where they're going to be at a lot of places to where in comic books you don't see a lot. Fast food restaurants. This is another example of really detailed drawings that works with the Beavis and Butthead art style. But you can see what I mean. There's a lot of things just on this page. You don't see deep fryer, thick Swiss cheese, a croissant, even wild stuff. And then you get Man-Thing in the same comic, right? How can you complain? And I love all the different interesting ways that you can see people, draw stuff. All right, we gotta stop here and talk about both these pages. Devil Music Volume 1. This thing is one of those records that, I mean, what else can you say about it? I was in LA at the time. I had found this record sitting on the shelf, been a fan of White Zombie in general, but never had actually listened through an entire record. So I picked it up, and the reason why I remember this so vividly is because while I was staying at the register checking out, getting ready to leave, a car just smashes through the front of the storefront, and a light pole outside. So I'll never forget it because of that. But if you guys haven't listened to White Zombie, La Sixta Resto and Devil Music Volume 1 and Astro Creep are some of the best metal records that you can listen to. I would categorize it as groove metal. A lot of people don't realize that White Zombie is an 80s band. They predate a lot of the things that came after this. So your Panteras, so on and so forth, that kind of take that groove metal formula, they predate that. And then, of course, I wanted to talk about this because Ghost Rider 2099, the best 2099. Stanley just sitting here with the thing. How old are Beavis and Butthead? Do we know? I would assume that, they're in high school, I guess. That's one of the things that I've come to realize from 90s stuff in general. You have Homer Simpson choking his son. You got, these adults or whatever beating the shit out of these kids. I mean, as a 90 kid myself, I get it. But it's just wild. This stuff would never fly in comics nowadays. Or just in pop culture in general. Just, haha, it's funny, there's somebody beating on a kid. That would just never fly. And, of course, you can never go wrong with, John Romita Spider-Man. There's 3 people, in my opinion, that do a good Spider-Man. Number 1, of course, Todd McFarlane. Number 2, we gotta hand it over to my boy, Eric Larson. And then number 3, I don't know, it's a toss-up between John Romita for me, and then going back to just Ditko. Yeah, just quick little flip-throughs. Good stuff. All right, everyone, I think we're going to wrap it up. Again, just going to do short, sweet videos on these and the Ren and Stimpy comics alike. There isn't a lot of videos out there that kind of show these things off, so that's more or less what I'm trying, that I'm aiming to do. There isn't any going to be anything groundbreaking in these story-wise. There's a lot of cool art that's in here. That's the main reason why I would highly recommend to pick these up. If you are an artist, there's a lot, again, of objects that you don't see in other comics that you can really pull from. And if you're an overall fan of Beavis and Butthead, this shit is just funny. It is just straight up Beavis and Butthead episodes per issue. There are a couple of special issues that they did, for summer, Christmas, and whatnot, which we will be taking a look at. The Christmas issue that they had done. I have a video planned for Christmas stuff coming up here. So we're going to look at a Ren and Stimpy, a Beavis and Butthead, and probably like a Sabrina and something else that's going to be Christmas themed to kind of get in the good old spirit, I suppose. Well, all right, everyone. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. As always, thanks for hanging out and talking comics. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.